Welcome to Show Me the Proof, Get to the Point, the B2B marketing podcast where we show you the proof in the form of case studies and success stories. And we get straight to the point with your hosts and founders of Proofpoint Marketing, Mike and Gabby Grinberg.
Today, we are joined by Brooklin Nash, Head of Content at Sales Hacker. And let me tell you, if you are not following Brooklin on LinkedIn, you are missing out. So go, everyone, and follow Brooklin on LinkedIn. Brooklin, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Hi, Gabby. Thanks for having me.
So let's dig right in. We want to get to the proof. Tell us about something really exciting, a campaign that you worked on. I know you have some really juicy stuff for us today, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, so what I wanted to talk about today was the SEO audit and update project that we launched these first 6 months in my time at Sales Hacker as head of content. I had a ton to learn when I was jumping in to Sales Hacker and still have a ton to learn. But one area I know well is SEO. And knowing the vast amount of content that Sales Hacker has online, I knew there was going to be a huge opportunity for a growth in organic search. So after my first month, maybe 2 months of learning the ropes, my first big project was to audit the current content that was up on Sales Hacker and identify low-hanging fruit, as the phrase goes, for optimizing and updating for 2021.
What were the results? You did the audit, and now the work's sort of paying off. What are we seeing as impact?
Yeah, so we're only about 80% of the way through execution. We identified 100 pages, 80 of them are fully updated. There's a handful that are waiting on new images. Actually just basically new images for infographics or featured images. But with the implementation we've had so far, the last 6-7 weeks, our organic sessions are 43% above what they were this time last year. So tracking organic sessions the last 30 days compared to the same 30-day time period in 2020.
Wow,
that's a pretty big impact. So let's get into some details. I mean, I think a lot of people have heard the words SEO audit and have maybe a vague idea of what it is. But walk us through, what was what's the process? What pieces are you looking at when you were putting together this SEO audit? What was the focus?
Yeah, if you're going to put it in a phrase, it would be bringing all of our content up to date. Sales Hacker is founded in, I should know if it's 2015 or 2016, but 5 or 6 years ago. And there's a ton of great content that just still has been sitting there since, 2017, 2018. There was another round of updates before my time, but a lot is ranking relatively well for their specific keywords, but could be ranking even better by providing A, more up-to-date information, and B, the kind of content experience that folks are used to now in B2B. Just the last few years, we've kind of seen a shift in the type of content that people value. So those are the two kind of points of view for deciding what got an update.
So I'd like to dig into that a little bit, because you're touching on a really good point here about the differences that people are looking for, the sort of evolution of B2B content. So in your perspective, what do you think is that evolution? What are people looking for? And how did you make that shift for the content at Sales Hacker?
Yeah, a lot of it wasn't substantive. It was more in the formatting, how things are laid out, what was included, what was explained. So it was a lot of looking at where there was an opportunity to pull in more up-to-date resources so people could click through and learn more, whether it's internal links or external links. And then 2, just making sure that everything was laid out in as helpful a way as possible. These are all sales topics. Sometimes it can get kind of dense when you're talking about, frameworks or KPIs or sales playbooks. So just making sure that people were able to come onto the page, learn what they were looking to learn with whatever keyword they were using to find this page, and then either continue engaging with Sales Hacker content or pop off and know they can come back next time.
So how did you, obviously you mentioned the company's been around for a number of years now, and putting out tons of content. How did you identify where to focus your energy?
Yeah, it was, I told you right before the call, I'm not a super technical SEO. So it wasn't a super scientific approach, but it was.
But it worked.
It worked. So I guess that's what matters. That's the point of the show, right? So for this first round, we're gearing up to do a second round of updates with 50 pages. The first round was with 100 pages. And even the landing on 100 pages.
Just to qualify this for everybody. So you're saying you're focusing on 100 pages. Out of how many are we talking? I'm guessing you're talking thousands.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Even landing on the number of pages wasn't super scientific. We have just over 1,000 articles on the site, not pages, but actual written articles. So I figured, 10% would be a great place to start to update 10% of the content, right? That should give us some good, a good place to start before jumping into round two and kind of reassessing. So I already knew I wanted to update at least 100 pages. I knew there was going to be a ton there. So I didn't think I was going to struggle to come up with 100 pages that needed updating. Went into SEMrush and basically had three criteria. One, had to be older than a year. New articles could wait until round two. And then the other two, the article either had to be ranking on page one, but not in the top 3 spots. So position 4 through 10 for keywords with a volume of 100 or more, or ranking on pages 2 through 5 for keywords with a volume of 500 or more. And the thinking between differentiating those two is, look, if it's bottom of page 1, it's going to be worth it to try to give it a little bit of a bump, even if the keyword volume isn't super, super high. If it's lower, it'll be worth it, but probably only if there's a higher search volume for those keywords. So yeah, with those 3 criterion in place, we very quickly identified the first 100 pages, and then about 20 more that I kind of put on the back burner to reassess for round 2.
So going through this audit of over 1,000, you identified 10%, about 100 pages of over 1,000 articles. Now, with that, you said you had a 43% increase in on-page traffic. On-page traffic or views, correct?
Yeah, organic sessions. Mm-hmm.
Organic sessions, which is phenomenal, by the way. So kudos to you and the team for doing this. I'd like to dig into some of the challenges that you faced when executing this. What were some things that, were challenges that came up? Did you anticipate them? And if not, what were some of the things that you did to kind of circumvent those challenges?
Right. I think there were 2 main challenges. One is pretty unique to Sales Hacker, so that's kind of an aside. But the main challenge was, execution. We can plan all day, but figuring out how to create the bandwidth to take this audit that took, 20 or 30 hours and then execute it, which would take more like 300 hours was the difficult part of bridging that gap. So that was a bigger challenge in the beginning, was finding the right contractor to do it, figuring out what the right workflow would be so that I could oversee what was going on and approve updates and suggestions and have a lot of back and forth without A, eating up a ton of my time, or B, just kind of a contractor running wild and making updates that I didn't think needed to be made or shouldn't have been made.
So how did you, that's actually something I'd love to dig into in terms of, okay, you've identified the 100 pages. How do you decide what needs to be updated to make that move from whatever, say position 10 to position 3?
Right.
What is it that needs to be done to get it there?
Yeah, we went through a couple of rounds of that. The first round was when I was just running the audit. I would, once I realized the page was, say an article is on, say, page 2, ranking for this keyword that has, 1,000 searches a month. I would look through the page, I don't think I gave myself more than 5 minutes per page, and quickly jot down the things I thought needed to be updated. Sometimes it would be the images, they were either cheesy or out of date, or didn't quite match. Sometimes it was the statistics, sometimes it was adding context. So, if something kind of by accident started ranking on page 2 or 3, if we could add more context around, the specifics of account-based marketing, for example, then we could see that page increase pretty quickly. So it was just identifying what was missing and what needed to be changed very quickly. I just left it as one line note in a cell on the Excel sheet, or Google sheet, I should say.
Is that just,
and then,
again, as you're describing it, sorry, was it more gut feel kind of thing in terms of, hey, I think this is missing, or were you looking at also, I don't know, competitors or something like that?
it was mostly gut feel. I mean, I've been doing content marketing for almost 7 years, so pretty quickly having an understanding of, if this is ranking for X keyword, this is what people are looking for. Okay, this is ranking for, I'm trying to think of a good example, like, I don't know, maybe it's describing a specific process, when in reality what people are searching for is a description of the 3 or 4 different options you have for this process. So, okay, if this is the keyword, the most promising keyword, then we need to add a bunch of context in order for it to rank better than how it's ranking now.
I think you have some folks in the background that would agree with you.
Do or disagree. Not quite sure.
Well, Mike, are we ready to get to the point?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not just yet.
I'm anxious to get to the point.
Oh yeah, I was gonna. So sorry. The rest of that process was just round 1. Round 2 was the contractor we ended up bringing on. I created a handful of example briefs of what I was looking for, and it went into a lot more detail than what I had in my initial notes. It went through search intent. At that point, it did consider competing pages. It looked at what was performing top of page 1 and what was missing from our content, what was missing from their content that we could add to make it even better than what was on the top of page 1. Updated links, all of that. And so our contractor put together briefs, and I'd review and approve and go back and forth with comments and questions, and we followed the workflow that way.
So you mentioned briefs. I want to, before we jump into our lightning round here, I want to talk about briefs, because I think a lot of people are probably working with external resources, especially if it's smaller marketing teams, and getting a good brief is critical to get not just the right output, but also kind of speed to delivery. So what in your mind, like what's a good brief? What's included in a brief to make it good and make it work?
Yeah, they'll look different depending on whether it's for net new content or an update. But in general, I think that the few pieces that are most important for any kind of content, whether it's new or an update, is the number 1 target keyword. So not just a list of keywords, but this is the number 1 keyword we want to be going after. Then a list of secondary keywords.
So you're only providing, for any brief, you're providing 1 single focus keyword?
Right, as a main keyword, but then a list of secondary keywords that would be, sprinkled throughout, added in some headers. Maybe it's for a snippet, what have you. And then the third part is honestly search intent. What are people looking for when they're searching this keyword? Are they looking for a guide? Are they looking for, like a how-to guide? Or are they looking for an explainer? Are they looking for, templates and examples? With those intent questions, you can get a better understanding of what's missing from your page and what you need to add in.
And are you doing that? And when you are deciding what the intent is, are you doing that based on, like SERP research or competitor research in terms of top ranking?
Related keywords is big. Honestly, usually the page one results are a good indicator because they're the ones that have been rewarded with engagement. So those are the ones, that's what people are looking for. And then the people also ask section, which usually comes up after, the first or second result, is a great way and kind of a cheating way to figure out what people are looking for and how.
So how many? So you got the brief, and then I guess also one other question about the brief. Are you including? So you got focus keywords. You've got the search intent. Are you adding? Is there anything else in there? Are you providing an outline to your outsourced resources, or are you expecting them to do it and you're approving it? Like, what's the workflow for you to work with? Or how many writers were you using to do all this work?
Yeah, just the one writer, one contractor, and he subcontracted out a bit of the writing, I believe. But in the briefs, the example briefs I provided, it had those three elements I talked about. It had a description of essentially what the page one gold standard would be. So, this is in position 1 or 2, and it's in depth, and these are the parts of it that work really well. And then a lot more specific about the updates we'll make to our own page. So is the title tag going to get updated, and how? Does the meta description need an update? And then a whole litany of updates for that specific page, including new sections. We need to add an H2 that gets into the why, because we don't really explain why this topic is important, or the layout doesn't really make sense. We could make this a lot more reader friendly with adding more headers and bullets and that kind of thing. Adding in whole missing elements of the topic. So, if we're ranking for account-based marketing, but really it's a description of a case study versus an entire, pillar guide, what types of things do we need to add to make it as in-depth and as helpful as possible based off of the search intent. So I did the first handful, but then honestly passed it off to our contractor. It's Nabil at Provectus Digital. He's been great to work with. And he took those, and then he created a brief for each update based off of the initial notes I had left in the Google Sheet.
Well, let's get to the point here, because this show is called Show Me the Proof and Get to the Point. Brooklyn, you've done an amazing job of showing us and our audience the proof of what you've done, and the growth that you have seen at Sales Hacker because of this endeavor that you've now undertaken with round 1. And probably it sounds like there's going to be a round 2 where you chip away at another 10% of those 1,000 pages. But let's get to the point here. How could this work for other people? If there's somebody out there listening that has a similar size organization, or that has, upwards of 1,000 or so articles on their site, and they're thinking, oh man, I need to do an audit. Get to the point. Tell us how someone out there can do what you've done to see some of the results that you've achieved.
Yeah.
That's short of working with Nabil, like we talked.
Yeah, it's been great to work with. So I prefaced the show by saying I'm not a super technical, scientific, data-oriented guy, SEO, right? There's a right way to do this, and there's a quick way to do this. The right way would be to do a whole site audit, do an evergreen analysis, like look at which pages are losing ranking and losing traffic over time, stack rank them, go deep on each element. That's like the right way to do that. I say that with finger quotes. This is audio podcast. But that, especially if you're like a marketing team of 1 or 2 or 3, 1, that's super overwhelming to try to do on your own. And 2, it can get super expensive to hire an agency to do it for you. So then there's a quick way to look at the traction that you can get and the progress that you can make just over a few months. And I'd honestly say that's what this was I think I still owe the site a full site audit and look at all of these different elements, but this is like the quick version. So So I'd say go into your favorite SEO tool, whether it's Ahrefs, SEMrush. You never know if you're supposed to say Ahrefs or Ahrefs or SEMrush or SEMrush. I still don't know. Go to whatever your favorite SEO tool is.
Maybe if they're listening out there, they can tell us.
Yeah, there you go.
And maybe they want to give our listeners a discount. I mean, I'm just saying.
There you go, for a sponsor.
Right.
Figure out what your criteria is. I mean, if you have a good amount of content that's ranking top 3 spots or on page 1, ignore those. Look at those that are on, pages 2 through 5, where updating it for 2021 or 2022 later this year will give you a good amount of traction. And you can, instead of looking at each page, you can quickly sort down a list of keywords. So do that sorting I talked about, where you set your criteria and you sort the pages, or you sort keywords by traffic and position. And then you start identifying the pages that's ranking, and just keep checking back to make sure you're not adding duplicates, and then add in subsequent keywords as you find them. Highlight the top 2 or 3 keywords that you are focusing on for that page. And then once you have the list of pages, go through each page, spend 5 minutes looking at what's missing, what you need to add, what you need to update, and then go in and do it, or have a contractor do it. And I would say
15 minutes if it's somebody who doesn't have as much experience as you do.
Sure, yeah, take 10, 15, max 15 minutes. I'm not talking for the full brief. I'm talking for gut feeling. These are the 4 or 5 things that need to be updated. On top of that, honestly, create a list of things that need to be updated across the board. So for us, it was things like internal links, adding new internal links from 2020, external links. If we had a link from 2015, updating it to better data and better links from 2019 onward, I think was the guideline I gave. Meta descriptions, like making sure it's optimized for interest and click-through rate, all of that. So there's a list of things, like a laundry list of things you can do for every single page. But apart from that, look at the 3 or 4 elements that really need to be updated to compete for stuff that's on page 1.
And let's quickly go through some of the tools that you used in case others want to use some of these tools. So obviously you're using, you mentioned like a Google Excel sheet to kind of keep track of everything. You have a really good brief. So that's probably also a Google Doc or a Word doc, let's just say. And then you mentioned Ahrefs, or we don't know how to pronounce that
you
company.
mentioned SEMrush.
SEMrush,
Yeah,
right?
I've been using SEMrush.
SEMrush.
That was already in our stack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other tools that we can call out that might be helpful to somebody taking on this endeavor?
Not really, other than Google Analytics and Google Search Console. I just basically cross-referenced each page with those to look at if there's anything extra. If click-through rate was super low, maybe we reassess the meta description, for example. Right. Or if it's been losing its keyword ranking, if you see it in Google Search Console, then prioritizing those that it's been losing its status from.
Yeah. And then to kind of close the loop, either writing the content in-house or working with a freelancer or outside partner like Nabil. We got to give Nabil a shout out. And then creative, obviously, if that's needed. If you have a creative partner in-house, or how do you guys attack creative at Sales Hacker? Do you guys have a resource in-house?
We have a resource named Sam Hembry. She's our producer, and she's fantastic. She does anything and everything that's creative on our end. So from social media for this, it was for a lot of them, probably maybe not half, but 40%, we needed updated images. Like the infographic was outdated, or even the featured image was kind of animated and looked like 2015, not 2021, right? So she still has a backlog that she's working through and updating along with Nabil and I. So we kind of have this little workflow going between the 3 of us.
Awesome. Before we end the show, we have a lightning round, and we think it's pretty fun. So we're going to jump right in. Now, you haven't seen these questions before, so really it's just meant to be off-the-cuff answers. There's no right or wrong answer here, so let's just dive right in. What's the main KPI you use to evaluate marketing success?
Honestly, conversion rate. I feel like everything comes down to conversion rate. You can get all the organic traffic you want, but if the page doesn't convert, then something's off, whether it's the copy, the actual copy in your CTA, or in the intent of the page. People are browsing, but not necessarily qualified traffic. So conversion rate.
Good point. What's a new marketing strategy or tactic that you're looking forward to testing out this year?
I'm really looking forward to, once we have the bandwidth this month, it's been next month for a few months now, figuring out how to effectively and consistently repurpose content. I mean, we have a ton of content every week, not just our articles, but webinars, podcasts. We have LinkedIn Live events now. And right now we don't have an established engine for pulling out quotes for tweets or pulling out snippets for little 2-minute video clips or designing image quotes. Just figuring out what that muscle looks like and then building it as a team is really exciting to me.
Well, when you figure that out, we're going to have you back on the show for another case study.
Next year, that's the goal.
What's a tool or platform you use in your work that you couldn't live without?
I mean, is this besides like Google Docs and Google Sheets? Because that's number one.
It could honestly, be anything.
I think it'd be SEMrush, just because it's in one of my pinned tabs, along with Okta calendar, our editorial calendar, and Asana. Just because you can quickly jump in, you can look at competitor pages, you can look at partner pages, you can look into a specific keyword. I mean, it's more than just SEO. I feel like it gives you a very deep understanding of content very quickly.
What's your favorite business word or phrase?
I have a lot I don't like. I don't know what my favorite would be.
I was going to say that we might want to change that question.
Like a pet peeve one.
It could be your favorite or your least favorite. Let's put it that way.
I'll tell you what, I'm not sure. The jury's still out on this one.
Okay.
Let's double click on that.
Oh, God.
I cannot decide. I really like the concept because it's essentially saying, it's stopping and saying, tell me more. And in a time when people are like, oh yeah, and to your point, XYZ, or oh yeah, that reminds me about this. Like saying like, let's double click on that is great because it stops, pauses, says, I want you to say more on this. On the other hand, it's like one of those things like, let's circle back. Like it just sounds so cringy and even cliche at this point. So I like the concept. There's got to be like a better phrase for it, right?
I almost like let's circle back better than let's double click. Anytime.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way.
Nails on a chalkboard, for me at least. But that's not about me. So let's keep going.
Well, speaking of podcasts, besides Show Me the Proof, Get to the Point, what is your favorite podcast?
Oh, How I Built This.
Awesome.
Well, before it was a startup podcast, like the first podcast from Gimlet, like Alex is a fantastic narrator, super interesting story, but that's done, right? Now it's How I Built This. It's always fascinating. And Guy is just a fantastic interviewer.
Guy Raz is Guy Raz. He's amazing. Totally agree. What's your favorite business or marketing book?
I don't really read business or marketing books. Like I haven't since probably the 4-hour work week, like 6 years ago.
So how about other than Sales Hacker, what's your favorite business or marketing blog or YouTube channel?
Yeah. I really like the First Round Review. It's just an in-depth, almost like interview style, long form content from First Round Capital. They only release, I think, every couple of weeks, maybe once a month, but that's one of the few where I will read the whole thing, not skim. That and Morning Brew. I mean, that's just in my inbox every day.
Yeah, good ones. All right, last but not least, who is a B2B marketing expert that you admire on LinkedIn?
So many. there's this couple named Mike and Gabby Grinberg.
We're gonna edit that out.
Tell me more about that duo. They sound awesome.
I think I'd say Eddie Schlaner, who does very good copy. He was at G2, now he's running his own, or was running his own shop. Now he's doing it full time. But I love his content just because it's so, I'm not a copywriter. I aspire to be a copywriter, but it's such, if content writing is kind of an art form, like copywriting is like this whole other plane of an art form, right? So I learn a lot by reading his stories, seeing his examples. It's just kind of an education for me because it's so different than what I typically work on.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show. Fantastic. Well, Brooklyn, thank you so much for joining us today. This was an exciting conversation. I loved the lightning round and getting to learn more about you. You showed us the proof and we got to the point, and this is what the show is all about. So thank you so much for joining us today.
And everybody follow Brooklin Nash from Sales Hacker.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Show Me the Proof, Get to the Point podcast. Join us weekly for new episodes and seriously smart B2B marketing success stories. We'll show you the proof and get to the point every time. Find additional resources on the Proofpoint website, www.proofpoint.marketing, including the full episode library with show notes, guides, templates, and more great resources. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, and please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts.